The Emerald Crest Hotel lobby glowed in the soft gold of its chandeliers, casting warm shadows across the Italian marble floor. The gentle melody of a grand piano drifted from the lounge, mingling with the subtle fragrance of white orchids arranged in crystal vases. Everything screamed elegance, refinement, old money, until a sharp voice tore through the calm like thunder splitting a quiet sky. "What do you mean there's no reservation under my name?" barked Mr. Jun Kwan, the Korean CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech firm. His expensive Patek Philippe watch gleamed under the lobby lights as he slammed his palm against the marble counter with such force that the decorative bell jumped. Guests in the lobby turned their heads, some with curiosity, others with distaste at the disruption. The young receptionist, Ava Thompson, a calm black woman with an immaculate bun, pearl earrings, and tired but kind eyes, steadied her breath, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Excuse me, sir," she said politely, her voice measured and professional despite the aggression radiating from the man before her. "I've checked our system thoroughly. I think there might have been a mix-up with the branch name. We have several Emerald Crest locations in the city." "Mix-up?" he snapped, cutting her off with a dismissive wave of his hand. His tailored navy suit rippled with the movement, and his dark eyes flashed with impatience. "This is ridiculous. Do you people ever get anything right?" The words hung in the air like poison. Several guests stopped in their tracks. A woman clutching shopping bags gasped softly. A businessman lowered his newspaper, watching with open interest. Ava's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her professional mask remained intact. She'd dealt with difficult guests before. Entitlement came with the territory and luxury hospitality. But there was something particularly cutting about his tone, something that went beyond mere frustration. Then, he muttered harshly under his breath in Korean, his lips curling with contempt as he looked her up and down. "이 여자 진짜 멍청하네. 왜 이렇게 일 처리가 느려? 흑인들은 역시 이런 일도 제대로 못하네. This woman is really stupid. Why is she so slow at her work? Black people really can't even do this kind of job properly." The words were delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who believed himself entirely safe, entirely superior, entirely beyond consequence. He turned away slightly, fishing his phone from his pocket, as if the conversation were already beneath him. But Ava's fingers paused over the keyboard. Her spine straightened. Her eyes, which had been tired just moments before, suddenly sharpened with a clarity that seemed to shift the very air around her. She looked up slowly, her gaze locking onto his with the precision of a laser. "Did you just say—" she began, her voice dropping to a lower register, calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "이 여자 진짜 멍청하네. 왜 이렇게 일 처리가 느려? 흑인들은 역시 이런 일도 제대로 못하네." She repeated his exact words, her Korean crisp, confident and flawless, the accent not just correct but native, the intonation carrying the subtle soul dialect that spoke of years lived, not just studied. The entire lobby froze. The piano music seemed to fade into the background. The businessman's newspaper crinkled as his grip tightened. The woman with shopping bags covered her mouth. Even the bellhop near the elevator stopped mid-step. Jun Kwan's face drained of color like water swirling down a drain. His phone nearly slipped from his fingers. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for air. "Dangson, 한국말 할 줄 알아요? You speak Korean?" he stammered, his voice cracking on the last syllable. She tilted her head slightly, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of her lips. Not cruel, not triumphant, but knowing. Her voice when she spoke was smooth as silk, each syllable enunciated with deliberate care. "네, 아주 잘해요, 사장님. 그리고 제가 멍청한 게 아니라 당신이 잘못된 호텔에 오신 거예요." 에메랄드 크레스트 센트럴은 다운타운에 있어요. 여긴 에메랄드 크레스트 웨스트입니다. 확인해 보시겠어요? Yes, very well, sir. And I'm not stupid. You came to the wrong hotel. Emerald Crest Central is downtown. This is Emerald Crest West. Would you like to check? The CEO, who thought he owned the room, who had walked in with the confidence of a man accustomed to bending the world to his will, suddenly didn't own a single breath. His carefully constructed armor of superiority cracked down the middle, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. Shock, yes, but also shame. Around them, the lobby had become an amphitheater. Several guests had actually stopped walking entirely, witnessing what felt like a scene from a movie. One elderly woman near the concierge desk whispered to her companion, "Did that just happen?" Ava maintained her professional composure, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled up a map on the computer screen and turned the monitor toward him with practiced grace. "Here's the address for Emerald Crest Central, sir. It's approximately 15 minutes from here by taxi. Would you like me to call you a car?" Her Korean remained impeccable. Her tone remained professional. But there was something else there now. A quiet power, a reclaimed dignity that filled the space between them. Jun Kwan stood frozen, his expensive briefcase hanging limp in his hand. His eyes darted between her face and the computer screen, as if trying to compute an equation that suddenly made no sense. The arrogance that had poured off him in waves just moments before evaporated, replaced by a confusion so profound it bordered on disorientation. 나는, I... He started, but the words died in his throat. 예약 확인서를 보여주시겠어요? 제가 맞는지 확인해 드릴게요. Would you like to show me your reservation confirmation? I'll verify it for you. Ava continued, her professionalism unwavering. Finally, with trembling fingers, he pulled out his phone and showed her the email. She scanned it quickly, her expression neutral. 네, 여기 보시면 에메랄드 크레스 센트럴 47번과 메디슨이라고 되어 있네요. 저희는 에메랄드 크레스 웨스트 23번째와 파크입니다. Yes, as you can see here, it says Emerald Crest Central, 47th and Madison. We are Emerald Crest West, 23rd and Park. The reality of his mistake, and more importantly, of his gross misjudgment, settled over him like a heavy blanket. He had insulted her competence, her intelligence, her very humanity, all while being completely, utterly wrong. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. 죄송합니다. I'm sorry. But Ava simply nodded once, crisply, and picked up the phone. 제가 택시 불러드릴게요. 로비에서 기다려주세요. I'll call you a taxi. Please wait in the lobby. She spoke into the phone in English, arranging his transportation with the same calm efficiency she brought to every task. When she hung up, she looked at him one final time. Your taxi will be here in 3 minutes, Mr. Kwan. Have a pleasant stay at the correct hotel. The last sentence was delivered in perfect, accentless English, and somehow that made it even more devastating. He stood there for another moment, mouth opening as if to say something more, but no words came. Finally, cheeks burning with shame, he turned and walked toward the lobby seating area, each step heavier than the last. As he disappeared from view, the lobby slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed. The piano music swelled again, but several guests approached Ava's desk over the next few minutes, not to check in, but to offer quiet words of support. That was absolutely brilliant, dear, the elderly woman said, patting Ava's hand. Good for you, the businessman added with an approving nod. But Ava simply smiled politely, thanked them, and returned to her work. Her hands were shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was fading, but her face remained composed. She had learned long ago that dignity wasn't about making a scene. It was about standing firm in who you were, even when the world tried to make you small. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. You're watching Life in Stories, where real emotions meet unforgettable lessons, where we dive deep into the moments that define us, challenge us, and ultimately transform us. Today's story is one of pride, prejudice, and a single sentence that changed everything. It's about assumptions we make, the languages we think protect our cruelty, and the profound moment when someone flips the script entirely. So before we dive in, tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated, only to prove them wrong with just one line? Have you ever witnessed someone's arrogance crumble in real time? Share your stories below, because your experiences inspire these narratives. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our family. We bring you stories that matter, stories that resonate, stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Now, let's get into it. Ava Thompson, 26 years old, was a woman caught between worlds, and she had long ago decided that was her superpower, not her curse. Born in Busan, South Korea, she was the daughter of Joshua Thompson, a Jamaican musician who'd gone to Korea to teach English and ended up falling in love, and Min-ji Park, a Korean literature professor with a laugh that could light up entire rooms. Ava's childhood was a beautiful collision of cultures. At home, reggae music played from her father's old speakers, the bass vibrating through the walls of their small apartment overlooking Gwangali Beach. At school, she sang Korean children's songs and learned to write Hangul with the same dedication her classmates did. Dinner tables held jerk chicken next to kimchi, plantains beside japchae, her father's Caribbean spices dancing with her mother's fermented traditions. "You're lucky, baby girl," her father used to say, his deep voice warm as summer rain. "You get to carry two hearts, two histories." That's not a burden. That's a blessing. But young Ava didn't always feel blessed. She felt different. Her Korean classmates would touch her hair without permission, marvel at her skin tone as if she were an exotic creature rather than their peer. Some teachers treated her with extra kindness that felt like pity. Others seemed perpetually surprised when she scored well on tests, as if intelligence couldn't possibly come in her particular package. "Naomu dalra boyo, you look so different," the other children would whisper, not always with malice, but always with otherness. At home, she'd crawl into her mother's lap, seeking comfort in the familiar scent of her jasmine perfume. "Yama, why do I look different from everyone?" she'd ask in Korean. Her mother would stroke her curly hair, so unlike the straight black hair of her Korean relatives, and smile. "다르다는 게 나쁜 게 아니야, 아가. 다르다는 건 특별하다는 거야." Being different isn't bad, sweetie. Being different means being special, Min-ji would say. "You are a bridge, Ava. Between your daddy's world and mine. Bridges are beautiful. They connect people." Those words became Ava's anchor. She grew up truly bilingual, not just in language but in cultural fluency. She could navigate Korean social hierarchies with their intricate honorifics and understood when to bow and how deeply. She also inherited her father's easy warmth, his ability to make anyone feel seen and valued, his refusal to let the world make him bitter. But when Ava was 19, tragedy struck with the swiftness of a door slamming shut. Her mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 6 months later, Min-ji Park passed away, leaving behind a grief so profound that the apartment seemed to echo with emptiness. Joshua fell apart. The music stopped, the laughter died, and in his grief, he made a decision. They would move to the United States, to Brooklyn, where his sister lived. He couldn't stay in the apartment where every corner held Minji's ghost, where the ocean view reminded him of walking the beach with the love of his life. "We need a fresh start, baby girl," he told Ava, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Your mama wanted you to see the world. Let's honor her by living, not just surviving." So at 19, Ava left Korea, the only home she'd ever known, and landed in Brooklyn. The transition was brutal. America was louder, faster, more chaotic than Busan. Here, she wasn't the black girl in Korea. She was just another face in an ocean of diversity, which should have been freeing, but somehow felt isolating. She threw herself into her studies, enrolling in a hospitality management program at a local college. Her mother had loved hosting guests, had taught Ava that making someone feel welcome was a sacred act. Ava wanted to honor that. She worked part-time jobs to help her father, who was slowly rebuilding his life teaching music at a community center. She studied late into the night, maintaining perfect grades while navigating her own grief. Languages became her refuge. She already spoke Korean and English fluently, and she added Spanish and French to her repertoire, finding comfort in the structure of grammar, the poetry of different ways to express the same emotion. After graduating with honors, she applied to several hotels. The Emerald Crest Hotel chain, with its Korean ownership and international reputation, seemed like perfect symmetry, a bridge between her two worlds. She was hired as a front desk receptionist at the Emerald Crest West location in Manhattan. It wasn't glamorous. The hours were long, the pay modest, the guests often demanding. But Ava approached it with the same philosophy her mother had taught her. Every person deserves respect. Every interaction matters. Every moment is an opportunity to make someone's day better. She was known among her colleagues as the calm one, the one who never lost her cool even with the most difficult guests. She had a gift for de-escalation, for finding solutions, for making people feel heard. "How do you do it?" her co-worker Jennifer once asked after Ava had smoothly handled an irate guest who'd been yelling about thread count. "How do you stay so calm?" Ava had smiled. "My mom used to say that other people's anger is their burden, not yours. You can help them put it down, but you don't have to pick it up." What her colleagues didn't know was that Ava rarely spoke Korean at work. She kept that part of herself private, a secret garden she tended alone. She'd learned in Korea that sometimes revealing all of yourself gave others power over you. Sometimes being underestimated was its own form of protection. She'd listen to Korean guests complain about service in their native language, never letting on that she understood every word. She'd hear employees from the Korean management company make casual comments in the break room, assuming the American girl couldn't follow along. She wasn't hiding exactly. She was observing, learning, understanding the dynamics before revealing her full hand. "Respect isn't about where you're from," she often told her father over their Sunday dinners of jerk chicken and kimchi fried rice. "Their tradition, their rebellion against having to choose one culture over another. It's about how you treat people. And I decided a long time ago that I'd rather be underestimated and kind than impressive and cruel." Joshua would nod, pride shining in his eyes. "Your mama would be so proud of who you've become." But even Ava, with all her patience and philosophy, had limits. She'd been disrespected before, by guests who saw her skin color before her competence, by people who assumed she was less intelligent, less capable, less worthy of basic courtesy. She'd developed a thick skin, a professional smile that could weather almost any storm. But there was something about being insulted in her mother's language, in the tongue that had been her first lullabies and bedtime stories, that cut deeper than English ever could. Korean was sacred to her. It was her mother's voice reading poetry. It was her childhood friends' laughter. It was the sound of home. And when someone weaponized it, assuming she couldn't understand, assuming her blackness made her somehow less than, somehow safe to mock, that was a line crossed. To Ava, language was not just words. It was bridge building. It was heritage. It was her mother's legacy living on in every syllable. But some bridges, she'd soon learn, were built through fire. And sometimes, the strongest foundations required you to stand your ground and refuse to be moved. Jun Kwon, 35 years old, was a man accustomed to getting his way. As the CEO of Hanul Tech, one of Korea's top artificial intelligence firms, he'd built an empire on precision, innovation, and an almost ruthless efficiency. His company had gone public 3 years ago, making him one of the youngest self-made billionaires in Seoul. Forbes had featured him. TechCrunch called him the future of AI. He was brilliant, driven, and absolutely convinced of his own superiority. Born into a middle-class family in Gangnam, Jun had clawed his way up through Seoul National University, then Stanford, then the brutal Korean corporate world where 18-hour days were standard and showing weakness was career suicide. He'd sacrificed relationships, health, sleep, everything, on the altar of success. And it had paid off, handsomely. But success had calcified something in him. Where there might once have been empathy, there was now impatience. Where there might have been curiosity, there was now assumption. He'd become the kind of man who believed that wealth and achievement were meritocratic, that he was at the top because he deserved it, and those below him were there because they'd failed to rise. He didn't see this as arrogance. He saw it as reality. His employees feared him. His competitors respected him. His family, a mother in Seoul he called once a month out of duty, a younger sister who'd stopped trying to connect years ago, felt like strangers. He had everything except the one thing money couldn't buy, genuine human connection. But Jun Kwon didn't think about that. He didn't have time for introspection when there were quarterly earnings to hit, investors to appease, innovations to launch. He'd flown into New York for the International Luxury Technology Expo, where Hanul Tech was unveiling a new AI concierge system designed for high-end hotels. It was a major presentation, one that could secure contracts worth hundreds of millions. His secretary, Min Seo, had booked him at the Emerald Crest Central, the flagship location, the one that catered to heads of state and celebrities, the one with the penthouse suites and Michelin-starred restaurant. But in his rush from the airport, exhausted from the 14-hour flight and already mentally running through his presentation, Jun had given the taxi driver the wrong address. He'd said Emerald Crest and assumed there was only one. Why would there be multiple locations? In his world, when you said the best, there was only ever one option. So when he walked into the Emerald Crest West, a beautiful hotel, certainly, but not the flagship, not his hotel, he was already irritated. When the receptionist couldn't immediately find his reservation, that irritation ignited into fury. He'd been traveling for nearly 20 hours. He had a presentation in 6 hours. He needed a shower, a change of clothes, 3 espressos, and absolute perfection from everyone around him. Instead, he was being told there was a mix-up. Unacceptable. The receptionist. He barely registered her as a person, just an obstacle between him and his bed, was trying to explain something about different locations, but he didn't have patience for excuses. "Do you people ever get anything right?" He'd snapped, the words coming automatically, the same dismissiveness he used with incompetent employees. And then, in Korean, the language that was supposed to be his private venting space, his release valve, he let his true thoughts spill out. "This woman is really stupid. Why is she so slow at her work? Black people really can't even do this kind of job properly." The words were ugly, yes, but in his exhausted, frustrated state, He barely registered their cruelty. He was just venting. She couldn't understand anyway. What did it matter? Except she could. And she did. When she repeated his words back to him, perfectly, devastatingly, his entire world tilted on its axis. Dangsin, 한국말 할 줄 알아요? You speak Korean? The question came out strangled, disbelieving. It wasn't possible. She was black, American, young. Nothing about her fit his narrow mental model of who spoke his language. 네, 아주 잘해요, 사장님. 그리고 제가 멍청한 게 아니라 당신이 잘못된 호텔에 오신 거예요. 에메랄드 크레스트 센트럴은 다운타운에 있어요. 여긴 에메랄드 크레스트 웨스트입니다. 확인해 보시겠어요? Yes, very well, sir. And I'm not stupid. You came to the wrong hotel. Emerald Crest Central is downtown. This is Emerald Crest West. Would you like to check? Her response was a surgical strike. Calm, factual, and utterly damning. Every assumption he'd made shattered simultaneously. She wasn't incompetent. He was wrong. She wasn't slow. He was impatient. She wasn't stupid. He was prejudiced. And everyone had witnessed it. The businessman, reading the newspaper near the fireplace, had looked up, eyes wide. The elderly couple by the concierge desk had gasped audibly. Even the bellhop by the elevator had frozen, watching the scene unfold with barely concealed shock. June felt heat crawl up his neck, spreading across his cheeks. This was a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. Shame. Pure, undiluted shame. Nanan, he stammered, his usually sharp mind completely blank. She'd continued with professional efficiency, showing him the map, explaining the difference between locations, offering to call him a taxi. Her Korean remained flawless throughout, not just grammatically correct, but culturally nuanced. She used the proper honorifics, the right level of formality, everything that indicated deep fluency, which meant she'd understood every insulting word, every racist assumption, every cruel dismissal. 죄송합니다. I'm sorry, he'd managed to whisper, but it felt pathetically inadequate. She'd simply nodded and called him a taxi, her professionalism never wavering, which somehow made it worse. She didn't yell. She didn't demand to speak to his superior. She didn't make a scene. She just maintained her dignity while he lost his. When the taxi arrived and he climbed into the back seat, giving the driver the correct address, June sat in stunned silence. The city lights blurred past the window, but he barely saw them. What he saw instead was her face. Calm, knowing, and utterly composed even in the face of his cruelty. What he heard was her voice. Flawless Korean exposing his assumptions as the lies they were. What he felt was something unfamiliar and deeply uncomfortable, the recognition that he'd been fundamentally, inexcusably wrong, not just about the hotel, about everything. He checked into Emerald Crest Central in a daze, barely responding to the overly attentive staff. The penthouse suite was immaculate, the view of Manhattan breathtaking, but he couldn't enjoy any of it. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city and replayed the scene over and over. 흑인들은 역시 이런 일도 제대로 못하네. Black people really can't even do this kind of job properly. Had he really said that? Had those words really come out of his mouth? He wanted to tell himself it was just the exhaustion talking, just frustration, just a momentary lapse. But he knew better. Those words had come too easily, too automatically. They revealed something ugly he'd been carrying inside without examination. His phone buzzed. Mincio, his secretary, asking if he'd arrived safely. He didn't respond. Instead, he pulled up the Emerald Crest Company website and navigated to the West location page. There, among the staff photos, he found her. Ava Thompson, front desk receptionist. Her smile in the photo was warm and genuine, her eyes bright with intelligence. He read her small bio. Ava joined Emerald Crest with a degree in hospitality management and brings a passion for creating exceptional guest experiences. Fluent in English, Korean, Spanish, and French. Fluent in Korean. It had been right there. Public information. And he'd never even thought to look, to ask, to consider the possibility. He'd just assumed. Days turned into weeks, but June Kwan couldn't shake her image. He'd delivered his presentation at the expo, flawlessly, as always. He'd secured 3 major contracts worth over $200 million. He'd been interviewed by tech publications, praised by industry leaders, celebrated by his board of directors. But none of it felt like victory. At night, alone in his penthouse suite, her words echoed in his head. Ne adjujalheo sajangnim. Yes, very well, sir. The way she'd said it, no anger, no vindictiveness, just calm statement of fact, haunted him more than any screaming match ever could. He found himself wondering about her constantly. How had she learned Korean so perfectly? Why was she working at a hotel reception desk with her obvious intelligence and language skills? What had her life been like? More uncomfortably, he wondered, how many other people had he dismissed? How many other brilliant individuals had he overlooked because they didn't fit his narrow expectations? His success, he'd always believed, was built on merit, his intelligence, his work ethic, his vision. But what if it was also built on advantages he'd never acknowledged? On doors that opened more easily for him because of how he looked, where he was from, what people assumed about him. The thought was destabilizing. He tried to focus on work, throwing himself into back-to-back meetings, product development sessions, investor calls. But his concentration was fractured. His team noticed. Sajang Nim, are you feeling all right? Min Seo asked one afternoon when he'd zoned out during a budget review for the 3rd time. Fine, he'd answered curtly. Just tired. But it wasn't exhaustion. It was a kind of awakening, and it was profoundly uncomfortable. 2 weeks after the incident, his business in New York concluded. He should have returned to Seoul. His flight was booked. His apartment there was waiting. His company needed him. Instead, he found himself standing outside the Emerald Crest West, staring at the entrance like it held answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. What are you doing? The rational part of his brain demanded. You apologized. She accepted. Move on. But moving on felt wrong. The apology had been rushed, inadequate, born more from shock than genuine reflection. He needed to do better. Or maybe, a quieter voice whispered, you just need to see her again. He pushed that thought away and walked into the lobby. The evening shift was on. A different receptionist stood at the desk, a young man with red hair and freckles who greeted him cheerfully. Good evening, sir. Welcome to Emerald Crest West. Do you have a reservation? No, June said, the words feeling strange. He always had reservations. He always planned ahead. What was he doing here? Actually, I was wondering, is Ava Thompson working tonight? The receptionist's smile flickered with curiosity. Ava? No, sir, she's on the day shift. She'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Is there something I can help you with? No, thank you. June turned to leave, then stopped. Actually, yes. I'd like to book a room for tonight. Of course. Let me get you set up. And just like that, June Kwan, a man who owned a penthouse in Seoul, a luxury apartment in San Francisco, and had access to any hotel suite in the world, booked a standard room at a mid-tier hotel for the sole purpose of being in the same building as a woman he'd insulted. He didn't examine this too closely. The next morning, he was in the lobby at 6:45 a.m., sitting in one of the elegant armchairs with a newspaper he wasn't reading, watching the entrance like a schoolboy waiting for his crush. At 6:55 a.m., she walked in. She wore the same professional attire, black pencil skirt, crisp white blouse, her hair pulled back in that same immaculate bun. But in the morning light streaming through the lobby windows, he noticed details he'd missed before. The grace of her walk, the way she greeted the security guard with genuine warmth, the tiredness around her eyes that spoke of early mornings and long days. She didn't see him at first. She went straight to the desk, logged into the computer, and began her opening procedures with practiced efficiency. He watched her for 10 minutes, gathering courage. Finally, he stood and approached the desk. She looked up, and for just a fraction of a second, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps wariness, before her professional mask slid into place. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" English, formal, distant. "Miss Thompson," he began, his carefully rehearsed words suddenly feeling inadequate. I'm staying here, room 412, but that's not why I came to the desk." She waited, her expression neutral but her posture slightly tense. "I wanted to apologize. Properly. What I said to you that day was inexcusable. It was racist, it was cruel, and it revealed a part of myself that I'm ashamed of." The lobby was quiet at this early hour. A few business travelers passed through, but no one paid them attention. Ava studied him for a long moment. "You already apologized, Mr. Kwan. We can leave it at that." "But I don't want to leave it at that," he said, surprising himself with his vehemence. "I've spent 2 weeks thinking about what happened, about what I said, what it revealed about me, how often I must have hurt people without even realizing it. And what exactly do you want from me?" Her voice was calm, but carried an edge now. "Absolution? A pat on the back for having a belated conscience." The words stung, but they were fair. "No," he said quietly. "I guess I just wanted you to know that I heard you. Not just your Korean, though that was humbling, but I heard the person I became in that moment, and I didn't like it." She tilted her head slightly, considering him. "Mr. Kwan, I appreciate the apology, truly, but I meet people like you every day. People who make assumptions about me based on how I look, where they think I'm from, what they think I'm capable of. Most of them never apologize. Most of them never even realize they've done anything wrong." "I know," he said, "and I was one of them. I'm still one of them, probably, but I'm trying to do better." "Why?" The question was direct, her eyes searching his face. "Why does it matter to you what I think?" It was a good question, one he'd been asking himself. "Because," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "in 35 years, no one has ever held up a mirror quite like you did. And I realized I've been walking around blind to my own privilege, my own prejudice. That's not the person I want to be." Ava was quiet for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a big smile, but a small, genuine one that reached her eyes. "That's the most honest thing you've said," she observed. "Most people would have made excuses, blamed it on exhaustion or stress. At least you're owning it." "Does that mean you forgive me?" he asked, and immediately felt foolish for the hopefulness in his voice. "It means I appreciate the growth," she said carefully. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn in one conversation, Mr. Kwan, but acknowledgement is a start." A guest approached the desk, and Ava smoothly shifted her attention. "I'll be right with you, ma'am." She turned back to June. "Was there anything else you needed?" He should have said no, should have left with whatever dignity remained. But instead, he heard himself ask, "Would you have coffee with me?" Not now, obviously, but sometime. "I'd like to understand. I'd like to learn how to see the world more like you do." She raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Kwan, are you asking me to educate you on your own bias? Because that's not my job." "No," he said quickly. "I'm asking if you'd be willing to share your story." as someone who clearly navigates multiple worlds. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm asking if you'd let me listen. She considered this, her fingers drumming lightly on the desk. I get off at 3 o'clock today. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks east. Cafe Luminoso. If you're there at 3:30, and if I feel like showing up, maybe we'll talk. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. I'll be there, he said. Maybe, she corrected. You'll maybe be there. I haven't decided yet if this is worth my time. And with that, she turned her full attention to the waiting guest, dismissing him as thoroughly as he'd once dismissed her. June walked away from the desk feeling lighter than he had in weeks. She hadn't forgiven him, hadn't made it easy, hadn't done any of the emotional labor of soothing his guilty conscience. And somehow, that made him respect her even more. June arrived at Cafe Luminoso at 3:15 p.m., 15 minutes early, his heart beating with an anxiety he usually reserved for board presentations. The cafe was a cozy space with exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans. Local artwork hung on the walls, vibrant paintings that seemed to celebrate diversity, connection, human stories. He ordered an Americano and chose a table by the window, watching the street with nervous energy. What if she doesn't come? The thought produced a disappointment disproportionate to a coffee meeting with a stranger. But she wasn't a stranger, not really. In that one brief encounter, she'd seen him more clearly than people who'd known him for years. At 3:35 p.m., 5 minutes late, whether intentionally or not, he couldn't tell, Ava walked through the door. She'd changed out of her work uniform into jeans and a soft purple sweater, her hair down now in natural curls that framed her face. She looked younger this way, less like the composed professional and more like the real person beneath. She spotted him, and for a moment he thought she might turn around and leave. But instead, she walked to the counter, ordered something, and then joined him at the table. "You came," he said, unable to keep the relief out of his voice. "I'm curious," she said simply, setting down her latte. "Most people in your position would have just moved on. Why pursue this?" He'd thought about this question all day. "Because I've spent most of my life in rooms where everyone looks like me, thinks like me, comes from similar backgrounds. I've convinced myself that's because those are the best people, the most qualified. But what if I've just been surrounding myself with mirrors instead of windows?" Ava took a sip of her latte, studying him over the rim. "That's very poetic, Mr. Kwan. But what are you actually asking me?" "How did you learn Korean?" he asked. "And why are you working at a hotel desk when you clearly have the intelligence and skills to do anything?" She laughed, a genuine musical sound. "You're assuming the hotel desk is a failure? That's your first mistake." "I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," she interrupted gently. "You meant it as a compliment, in your way. But it reveals your bias. You see service work as beneath certain kinds of intelligence. My mother was a literature professor. She had a PhD. She also believed that making someone feel welcome was sacred work. She never saw a contradiction there." "Was?" He picked up on the past tense. Ava's expression softened with old grief. "She passed away 7 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. She was Korean, from Busan. My father is Jamaican. I grew up in Korea until I was 19, then moved to the U.S. after she died." "I'm sorry," June said, and meant it. "That must have been devastating." "It was," she said quietly, "but it also taught me what matters. My mom used to say, 사람을 어떻게 대하는지가 당신이 누구인지를 말해줘. How you treat people tells who you are. Not how successful you are, not how much money you make, not what degrees you have, how you treat people." June felt the words land in his chest like stones. "I failed that test spectacularly." "Yes, you did," she agreed, not unkindly, but at least you noticed. Most people never do. Tell me about growing up in Korea, he said. What was that like? Being biracial, I mean. Ava leaned back in her chair, her fingers wrapped around her warm cup. It was complicated. Beautiful and complicated. I was always the black girl at school, even though I was just as Korean as everyone else. People touched my hair without asking, like I was a curiosity, not a person. Teachers were either overly nice or subtly dismissive. She paused, her eyes distant with memory. But I also had this incredible richness. 2 languages, 2 cultures, 2 ways of seeing the world. My mom made sure I understood that being a bridge between worlds was a gift, not a burden. Though some days, it felt like a burden. Do you ever regret leaving Korea? June asked. Every day, she said honestly. And never. Does that make sense? Actually, yes, he said. I feel that way about success sometimes. I've achieved everything I thought I wanted, but I'm not sure I like who I became in the process. They talked for 2 hours. She told him about her father, Joshua, who taught music in Brooklyn and still made jerk chicken every Sunday in honor of his wife who'd loved it. About how she'd learned Spanish from her Dominican neighbors and French in college because languages made her feel close to her mother, who'd loved words in any form. He told her about growing up in Gangnam, about the pressure to succeed, about how he'd sacrificed everything, friends, relationships, joy, to build his company, about how somewhere along the way, success had become his only metric for worth, both in himself and others. That's why I said what I said, he admitted, his voice low. In my world, if you're smart and capable, you rise. If you haven't risen, it's because you're not smart or capable. I've used that logic to justify everything. Working my employees to exhaustion, cutting off friendships that didn't serve my goals, judging people instantly based on superficial criteria. That's not logic, Ava said gently. That's just capitalism dressed up as meritocracy. And it ignores every systemic barrier, every form of discrimination, every advantage you started with. I know that now, he said. Or I'm starting to. When you spoke Korean, it broke something in my brain. This perfect, awful clarity where I saw all my assumptions laid bare. Good, she said simply. Discomfort means you're learning. Is that what you do? He asked. Learn from discomfort? I don't have much choice, she said with a wry smile. When you're black in Korea or Korean in black spaces or just different everywhere you go, discomfort is constant. You either learn from it or let it break you. June shook his head slowly. I can't imagine carrying that. You carry your own weight, she said. Different, but still heavy. I can see it in your eyes. Success hasn't made you happy. The observation was so accurate it took his breath away. No, he admitted. It hasn't. Then maybe, Ava said, her voice kind but firm, you need to redefine what success means. Not what Forbes thinks, not what your board thinks, what you think, what would make you proud when you look in the mirror. He sat with that for a long moment, watching the late afternoon light slant through the window and illuminate her face. You know what I thought when I first saw you at the desk? He asked suddenly. I can guess, she said dryly. No, before the anger. When I first walked in, I thought, she has kind eyes. And then I proceeded to be absolutely cruel because my convenience mattered more to me than your humanity. Ava was quiet, her expression unreadable. I don't expect you to absolve me, he continued, but I want you to know that I see it now. The cruelty, the racism, the entitlement, and I want to be better. Then be better, she said simply. Not for me, not to impress me or anyone else. Do it because it's right. Will you help me? He asked. Can we be friends? Can I keep learning from you? She smiled, that same small, genuine smile from the morning. Mr. Kwan. June, he interrupted. Please call me June. June, she corrected, testing out his name. I'm not a teacher or a guru. I'm just a person trying to navigate my own life. But if you want to have coffee sometimes, if you want to actually listen and not just perform wokeness, then okay, we can try friendship. I'd like that, he said, and realized he meant it more than he'd meant anything in a long time. But, she added, her voice firm, if you ever speak to anyone the way you spoke to me that day, if I ever see you treating people as less than, this ends. Understood? Understood, he said immediately. She raised her latte cup. To uncomfortable growth. He clinked his coffee cup against hers. To uncomfortable growth. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. They actually became friends. June extended his stay in New York, citing business opportunities, though his board of directors was growing increasingly confused about why their CEO was operating from a different continent. Sajangnim, when are you returning to Seoul? Min Seo asked during one of their daily video conferences. The Q3 planning sessions are coming up. I'll attend virtually, June said, distracted by an email on his secondary screen. The time difference is manageable. What he didn't say was that he'd started timing his mornings to coincide with Ava's shifts at the hotel. He'd show up in the lobby with 2 coffee cups, 1 Americano for him, 1 vanilla latte for her, and leave them at the desk with a simple note. For uncomfortable growth. At first, she'd been skeptical, even suspicious. But when he didn't ask for anything in return, didn't push for more time or attention than she offered, her guard slowly lowered. They fell into a rhythm. Coffee on her breaks, walks through Central Park on her days off, dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants he'd never have discovered on his own. She introduced him to Caribbean food at her father's favorite Brooklyn spot, where the jerk chicken was so spicy it made his eyes water, and the owner, Miss Claudette, treated Ava like family. This is my friend June, Ava said simply. Miss Claudette had given him a long, assessing look, then turned to Ava. Korean? Yes, ma'am. Another long look, then surprisingly a smile. You better treat our girl right, you hear? She's special. I know, June had said, meaning it with his whole heart. He introduced her to traditional Korean barbecue at an authentic place in Koreatown, where the elderly owner lit up when Ava greeted her in perfect Korean. 아이고, 한국말 정말 잘하네요. Oh my, you speak Korean so well, the woman exclaimed. 이어메오니가 한국 분이셨어요. 부산에서 자랐어요. My mother was Korean. I grew up in Busan, Ava explained. The owner's eyes misted. Busan, 내 고향이에요. Busan, that's my hometown. And just like that, they were family. The owner piling extra banchan on their table and refusing to let them pay full price. June watched these interactions with fascination. Ava moved through the world-building connections, seeing people, making them feel valued. It was a skill he'd never developed, had never thought he needed. One evening, walking through the tree-lined paths of Central Park as autumn painted the leaves gold and crimson, she asked him about his family. Do you talk to them? Your parents? Siblings? He was quiet for a long moment. My mother sometimes. She lives in Seoul. My father passed away when I was in college. I have a younger sister, Ji-hai. She's a social worker in Busan. A social worker, Ava repeated. That's beautiful work. She thinks I'm heartless, June said flatly. We haven't spoken in almost 2 years. She called me a corporate robot who cares more about profit margins than people. We had a fight at my father's memorial. She hasn't answered my calls since. Ava stopped walking, turning to face him. Is she wrong? The question hurt because it was fair. She wasn't wrong. Past tense. I'm trying to change that. Have you told her that? She won't take my calls. Then write her a letter, Ava said simply. In Korean. From the heart, not the CEO. Tell her what you told me. That you're trying to be better. He considered this. She might not believe me. Then prove it through actions, not just words. But June, you can't build a new life on corporate strategies, family, friendship, love. They require vulnerability, not victory. They resumed walking, and June found himself asking, "What about you? Do you date? Relationship?" She laughed. "Smooth transition. Are you asking if I'm seeing anyone?" He felt his cheeks warm. "I'm asking as a friend who's curious about your life." "Sure you are," she teased, but her expression grew more serious. "I dated someone for a while, another hotel employee. It ended 6 months ago. He wanted someone more conventional, someone who didn't code switch between languages or challenge his casual racism or have a Jamaican dad who plays reggae too loud on Sundays." "His loss," June said firmly. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I'm too much work." That's what he said, anyway. That loving me required too much thinking, too much awareness, too much change. June stopped walking again, turning to face her fully. "Ava, anyone who thinks you're too much work isn't worth your time. You're not a project. You're a person deserving of someone who sees your complexity as richness, not burden." She met his eyes, something shifting in her expression. "Is that what you see?" "Richness." "I see someone brilliant," he said carefully. "Someone kind, multilingual, culturally fluent, patient enough to have coffee with someone who insulted her. Someone who makes everyone around her better just by being herself. So, yes, richness doesn't even begin to cover it." The air between them changed, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. "June," she said softly, "what are we doing here?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I came back to apologize. I stayed because being around you makes me want to be the person I should have been all along. Is that friendship? Is it something else? I honestly don't know. I just know that I'm not ready for it to end." She studied his face for a long moment, and he let her look, not hiding behind the CEO mask or the confident facade. Just June, uncertain and hopeful and terrified. "I don't know either," she finally said, "but I know I need to be careful. My heart has already been treated carelessly once. I won't let it happen again." "I would never—" "You already did," she interrupted gently. "That first day. You saw me as less than human. You're doing better now, yes. But growth isn't linear, June. What happens the next time you're stressed, exhausted, frustrated? What happens when being better requires more effort than old patterns?" The question pierced him, because it was exactly what he'd been afraid of. "I don't have a perfect answer," he said honestly. "I can't promise I won't mess up. I can only promise to keep trying, keep learning, keep choosing consciousness over convenience." She nodded slowly. "That's the most honest thing you could say." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled over the park. Meanwhile, June was making other changes, ones Ava didn't yet know about. He'd started reviewing Hanul Tech's hiring practices and was horrified by what he found. Their workforce was 87% Korean men, most from the same 3 elite universities. Their leadership team was entirely male. Their recruitment practices essentially guaranteed homogeneity. "Why do we only recruit from SKY universities?" he asked his HR director during a video conference. "Because those are the best candidates, Sajang-nim," the director said, as if it were obvious. "Best according to what metric?" June pressed. "What about talent from other schools?" International candidates? Women? The director looked confused by the line of questioning. We've always done it this way. It's efficient. Efficient at excluding entire populations of potential talent, June said. I want a full diversity audit. I want to know our gender breakdown, our international representation, our recruitment demographics, and I want recommendations for change on my desk in 2 weeks. Sajangnim, this is very unusual. Then we'll be unusually excellent. June cut him off. 2 weeks. He also called his sister. When she didn't answer, he did what Ava suggested. He wrote a letter, in Korean by hand, from his heart. Ji-hyeya, I know you won't answer my calls, and I understand why. When you called me heartless at Dad's memorial, you were right. I had become so focused on success that I forgot about everything else. Family, humanity, basic decency. Something happened recently that made me see myself clearly for the first time in years. I was cruel to someone who didn't deserve it, and she called me out in a way no one ever has. She held up a mirror, and I hated what I saw. I'm trying to change. I don't expect you to believe me based on this letter alone, but I wanted you to know that your words, harsh as they were, planted a seed. It just took time to grow. I miss you. I miss the sister who used to make me watch her perform the entire soundtrack of her favorite dramas. I miss the person who chose to work with struggling families instead of chasing money. You understood something I'm only now learning, that how we treat people matters more than what we achieve. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I can be better. I'm proud of you, even if I never said it. You chose the harder, more meaningful path. Your robot brother who's trying to find his heart, Jungwan, Junkwan. He mailed it before he could second-guess himself. Back in New York, his friendship with Ava continued to deepen. She started teaching him things he'd never considered. How to notice the staff who cleaned his hotel room and leave proper tips with thank you notes. How to make eye contact with service workers and treat them as people, not functions. How to check his assumptions before speaking. Language matters, she told him one evening over Thai food. When you say these people or you people, you're creating otherness. When you assume incompetence based on appearance, you're revealing your bias. He absorbed everything like a man starved for real education. In return, he shared his world with her. Not the wealth or status, but the vulnerability beneath. He told her about the loneliness of success, about board meetings where he was praised but never truly seen, about accumulating money and accolades that felt increasingly meaningless. I have everything, he said one night, and nothing. Then give something away, she suggested. Not just money. That's easy for you. Give time. Give attention. Give the part of yourself you've been hoarding. Inspired, he started secretly arranging things. He researched the Emerald Crest employee structure and discovered that staff development opportunities were minimal. Front desk workers like Ava had almost no path to advancement without expensive additional degrees. Working through back channels, he established an anonymous scholarship fund, $500,000 annually for Emerald Crest employees to pursue hospitality management certifications, language training, or leadership development. The fund would prioritize employees who'd been overlooked, who showed potential but lacked resources, who came from underrepresented backgrounds. He named it the Min Ji Park Memorial Scholarship, after Ava's mother. When the announcement came from corporate headquarters, Ava was working the afternoon shift. Her manager called her into the back office, and June, who'd strategically positioned himself in the lobby with a laptop, watched anxiously. She emerged 20 minutes later, her eyes red, her hand pressed to her mouth. She looked around the lobby, and her gaze landed on him. She walked over slowly. Did you do this? He closed his laptop. The scholarship? I helped facilitate it, but the inspiration was your mother, your story, your dedication to this work that others dismiss. June, it's $500,000 annually. It's an investment in talent that's been ignored. People like you, who deserve opportunities but face barriers that have nothing to do with capability. She sank into the chair across from him. You named it after my mother. She believed hospitality was sacred work. This honors that belief while creating pathways for people who treat it with the same reverence you do. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say you'll apply for the leadership development track, he said. Your manager already nominated you. You could be director level within 2 years. She laughed through her tears. You're impossible. I'm learning from the best, he said softly. 3 months into their friendship, everything changed on a random Tuesday evening. Ava had finished her shift and was heading to meet June for dinner when her phone rang. Her father's neighbor, Mrs. Roderick. Ava, sweetie, you need to come quick. Your dad collapsed. The ambulance is taking him to Brooklyn Methodist. The words didn't process at first. Her father, strong, vibrant Joshua, who'd been teaching a children's music class that very afternoon, collapsed? What? No, there must be some mistake. I'm sorry, baby. I was walking past and saw the paramedics. Come to the hospital. I'll meet you there. Ava's hands shook so hard she could barely call a car. She texted June a brief explanation. Dad, emergency, hospital, can't make dinner. And then her world narrowed to a single focus, getting to Brooklyn. The emergency room was chaos. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic smell, the steady beep of monitors, people in various states of crisis. She found Mrs. Roderick in the waiting area. Where is he? What happened? Stroke, they think, Mrs. Roderick said, gripping Ava's hands. He was teaching the kids, and then his face went slack and he couldn't speak right. They got him here fast, though. That's good. A doctor approached. Dr. Reeves, according to his badge. Are you family of Joshua Thompson? I'm his daughter. Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay. He's stable, the doctor said carefully. We've confirmed it was an ischemic stroke, meaning a blood clot. We've administered clot-busting medication, but he'll need to stay for monitoring and likely further treatment. There's some paralysis on his left side, though it's too early to know if it will be permanent. The words felt like physical blows. Paralysis. Permanent. Her father, who lived through music, through movement, through the physical expression of joy. Can I see him? Soon. We're getting him settled in ICU. I need to discuss treatment options and costs. Costs. The word penetrated her fog of fear. What kind of costs? Dr. Reeves pulled up something on his tablet. With the immediate treatment, ICU stay, anticipated therapy, you're looking at around $85,000, and that's conservative. Does he have insurance? Basic coverage, Ava said, her voice hollow. He's freelance. The deductible is $15,000, and I think the coverage caps at $50,000 annually. The doctor's expression was sympathetic but firm. We'll need a deposit for non-covered expenses, at least $20,000 to continue non-emergency treatment. $20,000. Ava's savings account held maybe $3,000. She'd been putting money aside for a security deposit on a bigger apartment, for her father who deserved better than their cramped one-bedroom. I don't have that, she whispered. Can we set up a payment plan? I'll work extra shifts. We can discuss payment plans, but we'll need the initial deposit to authorize continued care beyond emergency stabilization. The bureaucratic cruelty of it hit her. Her father's recovery would be determined not by medical need, but by her bank balance. How long do I have? She asked. We need it within 24 hours to keep him in ICU and start the recommended therapy protocols. 24 hours to find $20,000 she didn't have. Mrs. Roderick squeezed her hand. We'll figure it out, baby. The community will help. We'll do a fundraiser. Ask the church. But even as she said it, Ava knew. GoFundMe campaigns took time. Church collections wouldn't reach $20,000 overnight. Her father needed help now. She spent the night in the ICU waiting room, finally allowed to see her father around 2 a.m. He looked so small in the hospital bed, one side of his face drooping, his left arm limp, but his eyes, his beautiful, kind eyes, lit up when he saw her. "Baby girl," he slurred, his speech affected. Don't cry." But she couldn't help it. She held his right hand, pressing it to her cheek. "Dad, you're going to be fine. We'll get through this." "Music. Class tomorrow," he tried to say. "Mrs. Roderick is covering it," she lied gently. "You just focus on resting." When he finally fell asleep, she sat by his bedside, her mind racing. She could ask for a loan, but her credit wasn't great. She could ask June. He'd offered help before. But the thought made her stomach turn. She didn't want to be another charity case, another person he fixed with money. Pride and panic warred within her. At 7 a.m., exhausted and unwashed, she finally checked her phone. 17 missed calls from June, multiple texts. "Where are you? Are you okay?" "Ava, please respond. I'm worried. I'm coming to Brooklyn Methodist," Mrs. Roderick told me. "I'm in the lobby. Please let me know you're okay. That last one was time-stamped 30 minutes ago. He was here." She found him in the main lobby, looking disheveled in a way she'd never seen. His usually perfect hair mussed, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt instead of his typical expensive attire, dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he hadn't slept either. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. "Thank God. Are you okay? How's your father?" "Stable," she said, her voice scraped raw from crying. "It was a stroke. He's going to need therapy, treatment, time. What do you need? Tell me what I can do." And that's when she broke. All the fear and exhaustion and pride crumbled, and she found herself sobbing into his chest while he held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft words in Korean. "Gwenchana. Nega yogi issa. It's okay. I'm here." When she finally pulled back, embarrassed by her tears on his shirt, he kept his hands on her shoulders. "Tell me what you need," he repeated. She almost didn't, almost let pride win. But then she thought of her father, of his drooping face, of the 24-hour deadline. "They need a $20,000 deposit for continued treatment," she said quietly. "I don't have it. I don't know how to get it in time." June didn't hesitate. "I'll take care of it." "No," she said immediately. "I can't let you. Ava, this isn't charity. This isn't me trying to fix you or buy your affection. This is someone who cares about you helping in the way he can. Please, let me do this. It's too much. I could never pay you back." "I don't want you to pay me back," he said firmly. "Consider it a gift. Or if that's too uncomfortable, consider it a loan with no interest and no timeline. But your father needs treatment now. We can argue about pride later." She wanted to refuse. Every independent fiber of her being wanted to say no. But then she thought of her father's eyes, of his slurred speech, of the potential for recovery if he got proper care. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, but this is a loan. I will pay you back, even if it takes years." "Whatever helps you accept help," he said gently. "Where do I pay?" Within an hour, June had handled everything. He spoke with the billing department, provided his information, ensured that Joshua Thompson would receive every recommended treatment regardless of cost. The doctor found Ava in the ICU. "Ms. Thompson, we're all set. Your father can stay in ICU as long as needed and we'll begin physical and speech therapy this afternoon." Relief made her knees weak. That evening, after her father had been through his first therapy session and fallen into exhausted sleep, Ava found June in the hospital cafeteria staring at bad coffee. She slid into the seat across from him. "Thank you. I don't know how to express what this means." "You don't have to," he said. "I'm just glad I could help." "Why did you do this?" she asked. "And don't say because we're friends. This is beyond friendship." He met her eyes, and in them she saw something that made her breath catch. "Because you did what no one else dared," he said softly, echoing words from months ago but with different meaning now. "You made me human again. You saw past the CEO, past the money, past the success, and challenged me to be better. Not for gain, not for advancement, just because it was right." He reached across the table, hesitating before taking her hand. "You've changed my entire life, Ava. You've made me question everything I thought mattered. You've shown me what actual integrity looks like. So no, this isn't just friendship. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's more. You're more." Tears slipped down her cheeks again, but different ones now. "June, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I'm not expecting this to change our relationship or obligate you in any way. I just needed you to know, you matter, your father matters, and I would do anything to keep you both safe." She squeezed his hand, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. They sat like that for a long time, hands linked across a cheap cafeteria table, while around them the hospital hummed with its endless cycle of crisis and care, ending and beginning, loss and hope. 6 months later, Joshua Thompson was walking again. The paralysis hadn't been permanent, thanks to early intervention and aggressive therapy. His speech had returned, though he sometimes searched for words when tired. But his smile was back, his laughter was back, and most importantly, his music was back. Ava stood in the doorway of their new apartment, a spacious 2-bedroom in a better neighborhood that June had absolutely not helped them secure, despite her suspicions, watching her father teach a young student how to hold drumsticks properly. No, grip looser like you're holding a bird," Joshua instructed, his accent thick but his words clear. "You want to let the stick bounce, feel the rhythm in your body." The 10-year-old adjusted his grip, and when he hit the drum, the sound resonated properly. Joshua's face lit up. "There, you feel that? That's the heartbeat. Music is just organized heartbeats." Ava smiled, her own heart so full it ached. Her phone buzzed. "June. Dinner tonight? I have news." She texted back. "Your place or mine? Somewhere special. Dress nice. I'll pick you up at 7. Mysterious." But then June had become comfortable with mystery, with spontaneity, with the kind of unplanned joy he'd never allowed himself before. He'd been flying back and forth between New York and Seoul monthly, restructuring his entire company. Hanul Tech's workforce was now 40% women, with recruiting partnerships at universities across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Their leadership team had been completely reformed, and while some of the old guard had resigned in protest, the company's innovation had actually accelerated. Turns out, June had told her during one of their walks, diversity isn't just morally right. It's better for business. Different perspectives, different problem-solving approaches, different lived experiences. Our products have improved dramatically. "Don't make this about profit," she'd teased. "Just admit that treating people well feels good." "It does," he'd admitted, pulling her close. "You taught me that." Their relationship had evolved slowly, carefully. After the hospital incident, they'd both acknowledged the feelings simmering between them, but Ava had asked for time. Her father's recovery took priority, and she needed to be sure that June's transformation was real, not performative. He'd given her that time without complaint. showing up consistently, proving through daily choices that he'd fundamentally changed. He volunteered at her father's community center, teaching business skills to struggling musicians. He started a mentorship program at Hunoltech, pairing executives with employees from underrepresented backgrounds. He reconnected with his sister, who'd responded to his letter and slowly, cautiously, begun rebuilding their relationship. "She's coming to New York next month," he'd told Ava excitedly. "She wants to meet you. She says anyone who could transform her robot brother must be remarkable." Now, as Ava prepared for their mysterious dinner, she felt the butterflies she'd been suppressing for months. Something was different about tonight. She could feel it. She chose a dress her mother would have loved, deep blue silk that honored her Korean heritage while fitting her perfectly. Her hair was down in natural curls, simple gold earrings that had been her mother's. When June picked her up, his reaction made the effort worthwhile. He stopped mid-step, his eyes widening. "Ava, you look Mali Anawa. I have no words." She laughed. "You literally just used words to say you have no words." "Beautiful," he amended. "You look beautiful. You always do, but tonight especially." He looked pretty spectacular himself. A perfectly tailored navy suit, but relaxed. No tie, the top button undone. The CEO polish softened with accessibility. "Where are we going?" she asked as they got into the car. "You'll see." They drove through Manhattan as the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and purples. But instead of stopping at a restaurant, they pulled up to a familiar building, the Emerald Crest West Hotel. Ava looked at him quizzically. "We're having dinner at my workplace?" "Not quite," he said, opening her door with that small smile that meant he was up to something. They entered the lobby, her lobby, where this entire journey had begun 9 months ago. The evening staff waved at her, their faces bright with barely contained excitement. What was going on? June led her past the front desk to the ballroom level, which was typically used for conferences and weddings. The double doors were closed, but soft light glowed from beneath them. "June, what?" He opened the doors. The ballroom had been completely transformed. Hundreds of candles created a warm, glowing pathway. Photographs hung suspended from invisible wires. Pictures of Ava and her parents, of Busan, of Brooklyn, of her mother's smile and her father's laughter. A string quartet played softly in the corner. And at the center of the room stood a table set for two, surrounded by white roses and purple irises, her mother's favorite flowers. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. "June!" But the surprises weren't over. As they walked further into the room, she saw them. People. Her father, standing with Mrs. Roderick. Her co-workers from the hotel, dressed in their finest. And standing beside them, a Korean woman who could only be June's sister, Ji-hai, her face warm with curiosity and welcome. "What is all this?" Ava whispered. June took her hands, his own trembling slightly. "This is the spot where I met you, where I was my absolute worst, and you showed me grace I didn't deserve, where you held up a mirror and changed my entire life." He gestured to the photographs, the flowers, the people. "This is your story, your beautiful, complicated, cross-cultural, resilient story. And I wanted to honor it properly before I ask you something important." Her heart was hammering now. "June." He switched to Korean, his voice soft but clear enough for everyone to hear. "아바 톰시운, 당신을 처음 만난 날, 나는 최악의 모습이었어요. 편견과 오만함으로 가득 차서 내 앞에 있는 놀라운 사람을 볼 수 없었죠. Ava Thompson, the day I met you, I was at my worst. So full of prejudice and arrogance that I couldn't see the remarkable person in front of me." He squeezed her hands gently. "하지만 당신은 한 문장으로 내 세상을 뒤집었어요. 그리고 그 이후로 당신은 나에게 진정한 강함이 무엇인지, 진정한 친절이 무엇인지, 진정한 사랑이 무엇인지 가르쳐 주었어요. But you turned my world upside down with one sentence. And since then, you've taught me what true strength is, what true kindness is, what true love is. Tears were streaming down Ava's face now. 당신은 내 인생의 가장 큰 교훈이자 가장 큰 선물이에요. You are the greatest lesson and the greatest gift of my life. His voice cracked with emotion. 당신은 나를 더 나은 사람으로 만들어 주었고 매일 더 나아지고 싶게 만들어요. You've made me a better person, and you make me want to be better every single day. He opened the box, revealing a ring that made Ava gasp. It was custom-made, a fusion design with a blue sapphire center stone, representing the ocean between Busan and Jamaica, surrounded by diamonds in a pattern that echoed both Korean and Caribbean artistic traditions. 아바 톰세운, 나와 결혼해 주시겠어요? 평생 당신을 사랑하고, 존중하고, 당신에게서 배우고, 당신 옆에서 더 나은 사람이 되겠다고 약속해요. 당신의 문화를 존중하고, 당신의 아버지를 가족으로 사랑하고, 우리 엄마가 자랑스러워할 사람이 되겠다고 약속해요. Ava Thompson, will you marry me? I promise to love you, respect you, learn from you, and become a better person beside you for the rest of my life. I promise to honor your cultures, to love your father as family, and to be someone our mothers would be proud of. He switched to English for the final question, his eyes locked on hers. Will you be my bridge, my teacher, my home? Will you marry me? The room was absolutely silent, everyone holding their breath. Ava looked at him, this man who'd started as her worst nightmare and had become her greatest surprise. This man who'd done the hardest work, examining his own privilege, confronting his own bias, choosing growth over comfort every single day. She thought of her mother, who'd always said bridges were beautiful. She thought of her father, beaming at her from across the room. She thought of the journey they'd traveled from insult to friendship to love, and she knew her answer. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with joy. 네, 사장님. 하지만 한 가지 조건이 있어요. Yes, sir. But I have one condition. He looked up at her, hope and anxiety mingling on his face. Anything. She smiled through her tears. 다시는 receptionist한테 소리 지르지 마세요. Never yell at a receptionist again. The room erupted in laughter and applause. June stood, slipping the ring onto her finger, and pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. Around them, their families and friends cheered. The string quartet swelled with music, and the candles flickered like stars brought down to earth. When they finally pulled apart, Ava's father approached, using his cane for balance, his eyes wet with happy tears. You take care of my baby girl, you hear? Joshua said, his voice strong despite the emotion. She's special. Her mama knew it, I know it, and now you better know it too. I do, sir, June said, bowing respectfully. I promise to honor her every day. Gurigo hangugmal jinja jalhaneo. And you speak Korean really well. Joshua added in heavily accented but earnest Korean, making everyone laugh. Ji Hai approached next, this woman Ava had only met moments ago but who felt somehow familiar. Iani, older sister, she said warmly, using the Korean term of endearment. Thank you for giving me my brother back. The real one, not the robot. Ava hugged her. Thank you for not giving up on him. The celebration continued for hours. They ate Korean Caribbean fusion food that honored both their heritages. They listened to Joshua play reggae on drums while Korean traditional music wove through it, creating something entirely new and beautiful. They danced and laughed and cried happy tears. At one point, Ava found herself back at the hotel's front desk, the exact spot where it had all begun. June joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking about that day," she said softly. "How angry I was. How hurt. How I almost didn't say anything, almost just let you walk away. I'm so glad you didn't." "Me too." She turned in his arms to face him. "You know what my mother used to say? 가장 아름다운 다리는 가장 깊은 골짜기를 건너는 다리예요. The most beautiful bridges cross the deepest valleys." "Wise woman," June said, kissing her forehead. "She would have liked you," Ava said. "The you you've become." She always believed people could change if they wanted to badly enough. "I wanted to," he said simply. "Because of you." She shook her head. "No, you chose to. That's the difference. I just showed you the mirror. You did the work of changing what you saw." Around them, the hotel continued its evening rhythm. Guests checked in, staff moved efficiently, life proceeded. But in this small pocket of space where it had all begun, two people stood together, changed, humbled, and grateful for the collision that had set them both on better paths. And just like that, the man who once shouted at the world learned to whisper love instead. Because sometimes the people who challenge us most become the people we need most. Sometimes an insult becomes an invitation to transformation. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best. He thought she was just a receptionist, but she turned out to be his reflection, his teacher, his peace. She thought he was just another entitled guest, but he became living proof that people can change, can grow, can choose better. Their story reminds us that respect is the true language of love, one that everyone understands regardless of where they're from or what they look like. It reminds us that our worst moments don't have to define us if we're willing to do the uncomfortable work of growth. June could have dismissed Ava's call-out, could have let his ego win, could have returned to his comfortable bubble of privilege. But he chose discomfort. He chose learning. He chose to see his own bias and do better. Ava could have hardened her heart, could have let justified anger close her off to possibility, could have rejected his attempts at redemption. But she chose grace without compromising her dignity. She chose to allow growth while maintaining her boundaries. And together, they created something beautiful, a relationship built not on perfection, but on mutual respect, cultural celebration, and the daily choice to see and honor each other's full humanity. Because here's the truth, my beautiful family. We all carry biases. We all make assumptions. We all have moments where we fail to see the person in front of us. The question isn't whether we'll mess up. We will. The question is what we do afterward. Do we defend our prejudice, or do we dismantle it? Do we double down on ignorance, or do we pursue understanding? Do we let pride win, or do we choose growth? Respect doesn't require speaking the same language. It requires seeing the same humanity.
This is Life in Stories, reminding you that kindness always translates, that growth is always possible, and that the bridges we build between our differences are always worth crossing. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge us, inspire us, and remind us of our shared humanity. Now tell me, if you were Ava, would you have replied in Korean or stayed silent? If you were June, would you have had the courage to come back and face your mistake? I'll be waiting for your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, every interaction is an opportunity. Every person deserves respect. Every day is a chance to be better than we were yesterday. Until next time, keep building bridges, keep choosing growth, and keep seeing the humanity in every person you meet. This has been Life in Stories. Thank you for being part of our family.